Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan, and I am back with another episode of Entrepreneurial Thinkers dropping into your feed this week. And you know, something, if you listen often, you appreciate that we understand that the venture capital world, the venture capital industry is terribly broken. But today's conversation reminds us that it's not broken because it doesn't work how it was designed. It does very, very effectively for those narrow audiences. But it doesn't work for the economy as a whole. And in particular, it doesn't work for women entrepreneurs or women and entrepreneurs of color in smaller markets outside of bigger cities and in diverse places. And that's the conversation that I got the absolute privilege to have today about how to innovate, think differently, think more entrepreneurially, bring technology like AI and blockchain to bear on this reality with Jenny Flores and Grace Lee, the co-founders, and I'll call them co-disruptors at AMH, the Catalyst Center. And the work that they're doing from the Bay Area to the country is really, truly using the best practices of banking and careers in finance and philanthropy, matched with the technologies of tomorrow to try and unlock the economies at the broadest possible scale that we can unlock our economies, which, by the way, that's good for everybody. If everybody is winning, not just the people at the top, we're all winning. And that's the conversation, the energy that we brought to this conversation. So I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as Jenny and Grace and I did making it for you.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or maybe it's your first time with us, so then welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you may or may not know, this is the show where I get the privilege to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry as we come together, as my mom used to implore me to try to do, to try to leave this world just a little bit better than we found it before this conversation. So today, I am grateful that we're joined by Jenny Flores and Grace Lee, co-founders of AMH Catalyst Center. They're going to tell us all about what that is as we get into the show later. But these two, by the way, I got to shout them out, were introduced to us by another former alumnus guest of the show, Thomas Logstrup-Reeves. So shout out, Thomas. Thank you, buddy. We're dedicating the show to you. So before we get into it and meet both these incredible women, let me tell you a little bit about them. So today's guests aren't just talking about access to capital. They're literally redesigning the systems to determine who gets to touch that capital. Jenny and Grace aren't just, by the way, proud Cal Bears, go Bears. They're women who are rooted in the reality of the American dream, a dream that at its best affords access, opportunity, equity, and great upside potential to everyone from anywhere. But of course, it's also a system that at its worst, it's exclusionary, it's biased, it's filled with barriers and cultural and institutional discrimination, which feeds the same folks over and over and over again, while too often unnecessarily starving the true disruptors and fresh thinkers. They come from families who crossed borders to pursue opportunity and contribute to their communities. They've succeeded in for-profit and not-for-profit systems and boardrooms, going from translating for their immigrant communities and helping their families find their way to helping deploy hundreds of millions of dollars to small businesses that the system too often overlooks. Sometimes they've done some of this work from inside the biggest banks in the world, right? Jenny built a career within big banking at global brands, which we all know, such as Citibank, Bank of the West, and Wells Fargo, which, by the way, shout out, that's my bank. Always with a bent towards community, small business, and social responsibility. Grace, alternatively, has spent her career inside various powered structures, philanthropy, policy, and social impact at organizations such as the Pew Charitable Trusts, the UN Foundation, Arabella Advisors, and also, again, Wells Fargo, learning how money, influence, and decisions really move capital to fuel good while also doing good business and create sustainable outcomes. Together, they're complementing one another to embark on this bold mission of using AI, blockchain, and lived experience to rewrite the rules of venture capital, especially for women founders. And they're really patiently doing this all to kind of build the better version of their daughter's world. which has a soft spot for me as a girl dad. But they're impatiently not just here today to kind of fit women into today's VC. They're really trying to rebuild VC itself to better serve women as an equal part of the entrepreneurial economy that they are. So I'm really grateful, and I'm very excited to unpack this entire conversation. Welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers, Jenny and Grace. It's great to share this conversation.
Thank you. I already know this is going to be fun. Your intro was just really dynamic. I'm going to steal it. Next time I'm asked to introduce myself.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Sometimes Grace folks are kind enough to say like, hey, okay, that's it. I need you to come to the next event that I'm doing. And so you can literally just like step on stage and set us up, right? Read the bio for us. So happy to do it. And the fun part of the bios, both reading them and scripting them, is they're you. Like that is literally just you. And that is your life's work. That is who you are to some degree. And now we're about to share a conversation with you to find out much more about you. And I'll start that with this first question. I already tipped, I'm a devout, passionate, former single full-time dad, girl dad, of my daughter, who, by the way, and her fiance are both graduates of UC Berkeley. So that's why
Go Bears.
That's why I shout out the Bears every time I have to. I learned while she was in school there, and now I've learned from Henry subsequently, right? Anytime you run into a Cal Bear anywhere in the world, or if I'm ever wearing the Cal Bear gear that I own, right? You get that shout out, Go Bears, which is just this acknowledgement of just good people who are trying to make the world a little bit better. So I'm deeply interested, first and foremost, to ask you this question. AHM is famously named for your daughters, and either and or both. I would like both of your perspectives on this. Maybe Jenny, you could take it first. Grace, you could take it next. How differently will your girls raise capital for their entrepreneurial ventures when they're in their 30s and 40s than the world we live in today?
Well, AMH. So my daughter's name Angie. That's the A. And she is already an entrepreneur. She started a bracelet making company during COVID and made a couple $1,000s off of the effort. And she realized right away that having an investor mattered. So investor meaning me. I provided the upfront capital for her to buy the supplies, to get her little marketing going. And she was able to quickly get customers, starting with our family. Then it trickled on to my friends and my larger network. So I think Angie, even today, is better positioned to raise than I was at her age, because she gets that there should be no idea that can't come to life because of lack of money. You can go raise it, right? And so for her, just that fundamentally shifted what she thinks is possible. The second thing I did, and this was not planned. It kind of happened as a function of I didn't have childcare that day. I was in New York pitching for AMH, and my husband, we were traveling together, had an urgent deal flow call he had to get on. He's like, I can't watch Angie. You have to take her with you. So she came to the pitch meeting with me, where I was actually asking for $1 million investment, and she saw that and they were engaging her in the conversation. And so she said, Mom, I actually helped you guys raise $1 million. And we were like, that's how you do it, Angie. You have to be courageous. You have to convey your vision and be confident. And so I think that for Angie, raising in the future will just be part of how she operates in the world. And that's what I'll talk about it later, hoping that other women in our circles and in the world can get there as well.
Grace, what do you think?
I love that because I think there's a lot of alignment with mine. So the M is for Maddie and the H is for Hannah. So AMH all together, and together they're good buddies as well. And Hannah is actually more of a outgoing entrepreneur, as well as started doodling on eBay and Etsy as well. And there's been a lot of working with her and showing her what are some of those business practices that you should think about. Think about the customer, think about your product, think beyond what you think it is of just selling a product and then you're making money. And the creativity that comes with that. And I have something that I've talked to Jenny about a lot is also thinking forward, using the past, our past history as a way to think about the future, in that, our families have created this this environment for us in a way that we are where we are today. And it became clear and imperative, definitely for me, but I think I can say for both Jenny and I, that we do the same for our girls, but even bolder, right? And even more innovatively, and even more thinking outside the box, not just thinking outside the box, but thinking really outside of capital B box. Rules don't have to apply the way they have been. And so that's sort of my my vision for AMH in the name, especially in the name, and why we decided to call it that.
I love it. And I also already love the both of you because you've so gently, kindly corrected me in the fact that I dyslexically butchered the name of the company. So now we've corrected that on the record. And by the way, my guests know I make these kinds of mistakes. I'm 5.5 years and like 200 episodes into this thing. And you know what? Sometimes I write a script poorly and then I wind up reading it so well. So it's AMH, and now we know why. And that's the most important takeaway for the rest of the day. So thank you for that. I want to dive immediately into kind of just the more complex, deeper issues here that are at hand. And the first thing, like, I feel like we're in this moment, maybe an era, right, of just kind of big global corporatism, even oligopolies, monopolies, right? I mean, folks can argue the nuances of that, but I think it's pretty clear. And yet most folks don't realize like that 96% plus of our US economy is driven by small businesses. And that small business definition isn't just because like it's in your neighborhood, but it's actually like a technical definition of, say, 10 or fewer employees, right? Having both worked in support of what we call small businesses for years at Wells Fargo, tell us why access to capital for all sorts of entrepreneurs is so important to our economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, having access to capital for all types of entrepreneurs, it is one essential ingredient into creating something successful, right? And capital is not the only thing, but it is a very important factor. And that is something that when you don't have enough of it, you are going to it's going to take you so much longer. It's going to be so much harder, and it's going to make your success so much further away. And to be able to give entrepreneurs who don't have the access to the capital that some of the more higher percent economic level folks do, giving them just an opportunity to that. We're not just handing it out, right? Nobody's handing out anything. It is truly about being able to introduce and open doors and pathways and create new pathways, frankly, so that all entrepreneurs across the spectrum of where they're at, whether they're selling a simple product at a pop-up shop versus, they're really looking to sell to companies at scale, having that access to capital is still so vital. And you'll never know where you can go without even that first step.
Yeah. Jenny, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I want your kind of added take on this. One of the reasons I asked that question, right, is because as I've been fortunate to have this kind of conversation with so many people that are trying to build better systems like you are, there's this perception of, it's like we're giving it away. It's charity. It's a handout. It's helping. And so I frame it to you, Jenny, in that way, like, because it's actually an economic stimulus. Like, this is investment in creating more opportunity for more people. So talk to us about it from that point of view.
So much to the shock of many people, the net new jobs in this country are created by small and medium-sized businesses. Almost 60% of net new jobs come from SMBs. And so if you want to consider how you grow an economy, it's the small, medium businesses, not necessarily the corporate. Secondly, I like to think about stimulating local economies so that we can grow the wealth with the people like me and you, right? And when you have small businesses, they hire locally. When they make profits, they reinvest them locally because their supply chain is local. And so you can see net new jobs, the money circulating multiple times within our community. They care about issues in their community because they live there. There's just wealth accumulation that happens for the entrepreneur, the owner, the staff. It stays local. Whereas big Fortune 500s, they may operate locally in our communities, but make no mistake that once the profit at the end of the year gets collected and everybody in finance is figuring out what to do, it goes actually upward and it gets distributed to first shareholders, right? And then executive compensation. And then for banks, that's where I come from. You have to have certain percent of capital on balance sheet. So they make sure we have that. And then internal projects. So very, very little trickles back into the areas where that profit was generated.
Yeah, I love that.
So I'm always a big proponent of let's keep wealth where it is generated as much as we can, because we should benefit from the massive investment of energy. Like, it's like blood, sweat, and tears that we like leave on the table building these businesses. Let's keep it local so that we can all have a better world.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to drop this one in right away. Just get it out of the way, because it's like the 800-pound gorilla that hangs over just about every conversation I have about anything that thinks about progress nowadays, right? So like we're in an era right now politically and on the edges of like culturally, not mass culturally, but just kind of on the fringes, right? Where it's obviously very popular to kind of dismiss the value of diversity, to dismiss the power of kind of the local diversity of an economy. And it's all of a sudden not cool to have like a wider lens in business. How is AMH navigating this moment while holding to your like really, really core values and beliefs? That there is a better side, like there's a future on the other side of whatever we're going through today. How are you navigating this?
So I am very fortunate that I have spent a career in finance and have done, and at this point, like hundreds and hundreds of deals. And I can like count on that performance track record to say without any hesitation that investing in markets that are underserved, undervalued, underestimated is actually very profitable. And when Grace and I have chosen to work in venture capital, because it's the kind of financial support that allows companies to scale, right? And to generate massive amounts of wealth. And we believe that women deserve that opportunity. And so for us, we know that women, I'm just going to talk about women-only founders right now.
Yeah.
They are actually a profitable bet. They are very efficient. So for every dollar that you invest in a female-founded company, you generate, for example, 78 cents on the dollar for women and 31 cents on the dollar for just male-only companies. So you're like, that's a significant amount of value that we create, women-owned companies. They have faster exits, 30% higher ROI. They are very resilient. They're capital efficient because we get so little VC, but we go and generate massive impact. And so we know that there are winners. We know without doubt there are winners. The issue for us is getting the capital to flow to them, which isn't, right? And so we don't, in this moment, necessarily have to rely on a DEI frame. It's just math, the maths.
Yeah. It's almost,
we go to it, right?
I'm old enough to remember way back when I was a kid, there was like the Pepsi Coke taste test stuff that was like an advertising campaign, right? And it's almost like the blind taste test mentality. If the statistics that you just described were literally just blindly put without a recognition of gender or color or anything, the entire market would be investing in that profile that you described versus the profile that it does invest in.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. You know, running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com.
Right. And so that is our opportunity. I don't need DEI to come and sell this. I can do it just on the numbers. And with investors who actually understand this power that when women get funded, they also, back to how we started this conversation, tend to invest their money locally and push it into communities and push it into initiatives that have a massive impact beyond their own self-interest. And so it just creates a better world for all of us, not just for women.
Yeah. Grace, I'm curious. Yeah. I'm curious, is there, I mean, just it's just totally personal angle on this. Like, is it just a slog on a daily basis when you wake up and you're like, you want to just wake up and just be forward thinking and forward leaning and all this positive energy. And then everything you're hit with in your feed or on your news site or whatever is just like shouting back at you, like, your work doesn't matter. You're not the future. I mean, is that like, what is that like just from a founder standpoint?
Yeah, I love that question, Rob. So I will say, there was a time in my life where that was the case. And I think there came a time, I've been fortunate, and I think this is where Jenny and I complement each other really well, working with a variety of communities, whether they be very low income. I worked in foster care as a social worker by training. I did social work policy through now, Fortune 500, Wells Fargo, et cetera, working with executives, other investors, et cetera, and seeing how that there is actually not a lot of difference between people, really, at the core. But what I think, as Jenny pointed to, when you look at the data, when 2%, average 2% of venture capital year after year goes to women-only founders, it's the math doesn't, right, to Jane's point, the math doesn't work, right? Yeah. And so to think about all of that untapped talent, and I'm not just talking about women, right? There's lots of other sort of communities or populations that also aren't invested in or overlooked or underfunded. Thinking about all that untapped talent tied with that lived experience, there is something about that has become so inspiring, and it really fuels my day. And as a founder, and I never really thought I'd ever be in this position, right, until more recently, having to do the daily kind of like the tasks of just getting the day-to-day work, right? It just, that's kind of like, oh my gosh, there has to be an easier way. But what drives it, ultimately, what gets me up every morning and what makes me through until I shut my computer down is really thinking about there is so much possibility. There's so much potential. And if people aren't incentivized to do it, we're more than incentivized, right? I've seen it. We've seen it in our work together, but also in my own work, previously. So that's what it looks like for me.
There's something about, I've just found this in my own journey. There's something about being early, but then having enough data, as you say, Jenny, and enough context to know you're right. Right? There's something about that conviction, that level of conviction that fuels you through the nonsense and the naysayers and all the stuff that gets thrown at us from most of society, not just individual people, but just the most of society, or the systems are designed, I say this, my words, not yours, like kind of to promote mediocrity, right? And just kind of accept the status quo. And so I have a huge amount of admiration for, well, the work that you two are doing in building AMH, but also the work that you're doing to help others build their AMH, right? To build what it is that they're trying to build in their local communities. And that's a segue to this next question, right? You are both everywhere I read everything I could read about you guys this last couple of weeks preparing for this. You basically spent the holidays with me. You just didn't know it. Right. Everywhere I read something about it, it was this theme of purpose meeting profit. Right. That shows up everywhere. Talk about that. Talk about how that North Star kind of colors your decisions on the entrepreneurs that you choose to support and work with and the organizations that you partner with.
Well, I would say that from my experience in corporate, there are many who believe that purpose and profit can't coexist. Right. And I am the person who comes into these corporations, and then my biggest job has always been to show the way. Like, wait a minute, let's look at these assumptions and why don't we test XYZ? And like, let's just like get the real data versus the assumptions. And then they start to see, oh, you're absolutely right. Let's do more. Let's do more. Let's do more. So as an example, when I first arrived to Wells Fargo, I got hired to set up something called small business growth. The bank had never had a kind of a growth a department where all of the businesses from small business commercial could have the support from the bank on the growth side and a collective strategy of how we drive impact in that space. That's what I intended to do, but COVID, because I got hired in January of 2020.
Ouch.
So,
great timing. Way to go, Jenny.
Right. Comes March and we have stay-at-home orders, and like, it doesn't feel like growth is going to happen. That said, I understood that the businesses who were going to get left behind were the ones that they didn't think were profitable or like didn't matter as much. Little tiny ones, immigrant owned, women owned, just, and so the bank, I personally had like 10,000 messages in my LinkedIn of customers saying, I can't get through. Help me, help me, help me. You're supposedly the small business person. So I reached out to the vice chairman of the bank. This is the lesson too for all the entrepreneurs. Just freaking pick up the phone to the highest ranking person and get it done. Like, just work in the channels sometimes isn't the way. Just pick up the phone. So I told him that this was happening. And I, as a representative of the bank, had this idea, not just as like the person in the small business growth seat, but like as the customer service agent, all of a sudden, we needed to react to that and respond in ways that were really meaningful. And this crazy thing, like, we're trying to also build the Paycheck Protection Program, which, we're having some interesting experiences with. What if we could donate the profits of that program back into these communities? And lo and behold, to make a long story short, the CEO, and that's how Grace and I met, actually, building that together.
Okay.
They accepted it. Fast forward, what did it show? We supported over 300,000 businesses with it essentially was a $420 million fund.
Wow.
Over 70% of those were diverse entrepreneurs. Over 50% were women owned.
It's like, 18, oh, look at boss, like our own customer base, our clients are these diverse people. Right.
18% of them during COVID grew revenue because we allowed them flexible capital. We allowed them to restructure loans, all kinds of interesting modeling that happened in there. And we levered up almost $3 billion in additional support to ensure that these companies were not just stabilized, but they grew. And so for me, and I know for Grace as well, this is not theory that we're talking about. Like, we've done this at scale. And the result to a company like a Wells Fargo, brand lift, huge, massive brand lift.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to say it was this alone, but this initiative ingratiated the organization with regulators, with elected officials, with stakeholders that really mattered, which created, if we were to monetize this, like millions and millions of dollars worth of like goodwill.
Yeah, no.
I would say that
probably
the bank,
more than that, even really.
More than that.
Yeah.
And so the bank generated an incredible amount of positive impact to itself, to, like, all up and down the chain.
Yeah.
At a time that it really mattered. And so I always say, perfect profit and purpose, if you can get them to align beautifully, synergistically, that's where magic happens.
Yeah, and
That's
boy,
where the world, like, you see these things that like give you goosebumps. Like, that happened. That's incredible.
I literally just got goosebumps. I'm not this not hyperbole. Like, I actually like was listening and I was thinking, talk about crisis presenting opportunity, which is like such a universal truth that we always hear, right? But very few of us ever are faced with an opportunity where we're literally that person who like decides to just dial up the extension for the vice chairman and skip past all their bosses and regional bosses and all that stuff and just kind of pierce the veil of a moment. But then it's just when the moment when there's chaos, right? So much other stuff just kind of gets tossed aside, including norms and standards and cultural bias and whatnot. All right. So Grace, I'm going to ask you to take the next one because Jenny kind of segued. She's become the host, which is fantastic. Right. So this is making my job easier. This is great. Talk to me about that story of how you two wound up meeting and then working together on that, which she just described.
Yeah. And I want to start with something to really further illustrate what Jenny was talking about, to be able to support organizations, small businesses that probably couldn't get bank loans or other be able to apply or receive small business grants other ways. I mean, we were supporting organizations that were deeply in communities, right? To be able to support these small businesses that were really hard to reach, for all intents and purposes. There were lots of small businesses who didn't have access to PPE, the equipment during COVID, which, I mean, thinking about how those businesses were able to stay open during this time period. And what we didn't do is the long-term data of whether or not those businesses are now bank loan eligible.
Right.
Right. And what that meant for people to have had a paycheck during that time. I mean, it really is cyclical. And I 100% agree. Purpose and profit are not mutually exclusive. They are absolutely can easily go hand in hand. And people feel good about it. Our colleagues felt great about doing these grants during this horrifically scary, uncertain time. And it's incentivizing, it's motivating. So I wanted to just kind of top that off with what Jenny said. So I had already been at Wells Fargo. And this is a story about how she and I met. And I actually really loved going to the office. So I would go into the office. I was there all the time. And it was going to be her first day. And they were like, Grace, could you let her in and show her where the bathroom was and how to get in? And I was like, sure, no problem. And we were going to be working together, sort of dotted line, across with other leaders in our team. And I think it was like, I mean, it felt like just it was like a couple months later, but I can't believe in that time. I mean, Jenny, your boxes hadn't even been like fully unpacked. We got thrust into this position of like, is this going to last 2 weeks or is it going to last? I mean, how long is this going to last where we're stuck at home trying to figure out how to continue moving forward with our work, but also with our own personal lives. And we were kind of brought together. The universe brought us together in a much more intimate, like, what is it, trauma bonding way,
right. Yeah.
To build something great. To build something that I told Jenny, I remember telling Jenny over and over again, if I can't keep my integrity in this, like there's no point, because this is the kind of situation where we have this incredible opportunity. Most foundations don't even have like $20 million. Right? $50 million, to have $420 million plus to be able to make really flexible capital available, to make grants available, it was really one of a kind. And I don't think there's anything since then. And I think it was very important for me personally I am the kind of person who's what you see is what you get. But not everyone is like that. So to be able to build that trust with Jenny as just colleagues, it happened. And especially, when there's nothing like a global pandemic to
nothing like a once in 100-year event to forge friendships, right?
Yeah. And I think we just had that deep trust that we learned and we carry on now.
It exhibits what I've sensed since we started the conversation, even a couple minutes before we went on air. There's a quiet confidence between both of you. Like Jenny believes in Grace, Grace believes in Jenny. And then there's this dual, as visually as we're doing this, like I'm looking at the two of you next to me on the screen. And there's this kind of visual of like, oh, this is why they believe they can do what they're doing with AMH. Like, because they've done this. Like and if we're really honest about what venture capital is or private equity or any of the, like, it's all someone else's money, right? And so in that context, like, you've already done this at scale with someone else's money, and you know how to do it, and you're just like, we're just doing it differently now, right? And we have a different vision and a slightly different space and and our own purposefulness and branding and our own value set to define how we do. I love that. Now it just explained it, because there's always the, as they would say in the movies, the meet cute story, right? Like, how did you meet? There's always that. And that's always, I'm always curious about that as a person, but quietly beneath that question, I think really what I was thinking about subconsciously was more like, what is it that brought these two women together to make them believe that what they're doing is even feasible? Right. And it's there is no like hesitation in either of you. I've not heard that so far today. Right. There's just this quiet confidence, like, we've done this already. And the numbers the math is the math, Rob. Like, and we know how to do this. So now we're doing it. So everybody who wants to be a part of this, like, come along, because we're doing this. That's awesome. So this is your commercial. Jenny, maybe take us off a little bit here. Do the sales pitch, right? Like, talk about AMH. Tell us about what it is. Like, this is kind of the business basics question here, right? Like, what is it? How does it work? How are you capitalized? How does it make money? Like,
Well, AMH, it's called AMH Catalyst Center, is actually a 501c3 nonprofit. And we structured it that way because we want to share our learnings with the field. It's a movement, actually. And as a movement, we didn't want the pressure of having investors and all kinds of other influences on it. Like, we want to change the game with the people who want to change the game at the pace that we need to change it. And that's what is the core. And so we, based on our expertise and lots of conversations with other stakeholders, including, and most importantly, the women founders, there's three things that we're doing out of the AMH Catalyst Center. One is that we are building, and we built it, an AI advisory agent. We train these agents with all of our knowledge and the knowledge of the experts in our network that will literally, it's like you go on there and it starts intimately knowing your business and helping you navigate the process of raising venture, with a whole lens on like the female experience, not just a generic, but like, what words should you avoid? What, like, do your pitch, like, this is how you reframe it. Understanding the financials, not just like these are numbers, but the story, the rationale, so that you can defend them on a, like, go head to head with a venture person who thinks they know all the numbers. Like, you should know them better. And so we train them that way. So that's the AI agent, the advisory platform. The second thing is we want to bring in venture capitalists and other investors who genuinely want to see women founders get funded. And we're creating referral pipelines into them so that as the women get really, really good at their pitch and like their numbers and defending what they're doing, we can have capital ready to at least listen to their pitch in a way that is genuinely interested in supporting them.
nice.
So creating that like flow of capital between venture investors.
Being the catalyst.
Being the catalyst between these two, the bridge, right? Between these two entities. And then lastly, research. Both Grace and I are very data driven. Like, data is everything to us. And there frankly isn't a lot of data about the performance of portfolios and like the secret sauce of like investing in women. So we are digging under the hood and getting the data, looking at what's working, what's not working, talking to women, investors, like literally digging out insights that are buried. And our intention is to share it with the field so that others can start to employ different practices that are better responsive to women founders. So those three things: the agent to support women, bringing in investors into our network, being the bridge between founders and the money, and then bringing insights to the field that allows us to think differently. So that's the nonprofit. And then we have a fund. It's AMH Impact Fund. That is a for-profit fund where we invest in women founders who are at the intersection of manufacturing and sustainability. Okay. We are the people who also believe that the planet deserves love, and that we know that women are at the cutting edge of some of these incredible solutions, and we're putting money behind them. So we are investors as well.
I love that. That's, again, frontline experience.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Plaintext Capital. You know, investing in Web3 and cryptocurrencies isn't about jumping on the latest trends. It's about understanding where the market is headed and why. Plaintext Capital is a digital asset investment firm focused on long-term strategies backed by deep research, backing the best Web3 companies and protocols, and investing in the newest asset classes of the future. They believe that Web3 crypto will drive digital innovation for decades to come, creating significant value for investors. In fact, their team of highly skilled professionals work with institutions and serious individual investors who want clarity in a space full of hype and noise. So if you're looking to cut through the chaos and invest with purpose, Plaintext Capital brings a disciplined, high-conviction approach to investing. You can learn more and meet the team at plaintextcapital.com.
Grace, what does wild success look like going forward?
I think right now success looks like founders getting access to the right types of capital. VC is not the right type of capital for everyone, and that's okay.
Definitely not.
But it can also be the right type of capital for some. And so just making sure they are informed and have the opportunities to get the right type of capital. We are looking at, I think success would also be thinking about the investors and giving them like proof that there's ways you can invest in founders that you might not be familiar with. You might fear that they're more high risk, but giving them proof that everybody there's talent and innovation in everyone. And so equipping investors with that type of information and shared vision. And I think also looking at success, it's going to be, I think, really important that we, especially now when we're not sure what is real data, what is real fact, we kind of have to go dig deeper and, like, to your point, to be more curious, right? Be curious about what does it actually mean? Why is it like this? Does it have to be like this? Thinking about the data, right? And how that data, and how you invest, right? And all the data that goes into like who you should invest and what's actually a good solution for us to be able to scale and make sense and still be profitable, but still also make a lot of impact. What does that data look like? And how do we create that data, and explore what makes sense? And we're incentivizing it. I think the reason why it's not out there is because it's typically not incentivized.
Right.
Funded. And
stuff that doesn't exist tends to not exist because no one had the imagination to envision it, and then the incentives just don't run or flow towards it.
Right.
I'm curious, and either you can take this, like AI and blockchain, right? Buzzwords. Everybody nowadays, right? If you slap AI, and if I said this podcast was about AI, I'd probably have 10 million listeners, right? But I'm not interested in lying, so that's not what I'm going to do, right? So talk to me more, maybe just the AI. Jenny, you did an excellent job describing it. Thank you for that. Right? Is the tool behind this, right? So it's the tool that's condensing, parsing, representing all of the knowledge that exists across the spectrum of the Catalyst Center's network of human beings, right, and all their experiences. where does blockchain, and play like I don't understand, because I don't, but where does blockchain fit in all that as a value add to the tools that you're building?
Well, I am happy to start. Grace, of course, jump in. So we look at technology as an enabler. And is it solving a pain point? And more importantly, like a core pain point that we can solve and then unlock opportunity. So one of the things about venture capital that is true is that it is very opaque. The fund, so the VCs that invest don't have to tell you who they invest in. They don't have to tell you at what valuation. They have to tell you anything. And so as a founder, you're navigating in almost complete dark. You're like, they say they fund AI. I'm going to go talk to these people. Well, there's a asymmetry of information. They have all of it and you have little, and you're like, here I am. And so because of that, Grace and I thought about, can we leverage a technology like blockchain, which essentially creates transparency in financial structures to create that transparency in venture? Meaning, can we start having investors on chain so that we can see what deal flow looks like? And if you're a founder, you can go and if you're part of our network, you can see, wow, there's this AMH Impact. They have reviewed all of these pitches and they funded these 5. Why did they fund them? This is great, like great insight. Because I'm very aligned to what they do, I will probably fit really great with them. I'm going to go build this relationship. And like, that would be so helpful.
That's to an outsider who's kind of an insider, like that seems transformational, right? I mean, versus the VC, like it's a nebulous website with like 1 page and 3 sentences and a cool logo. And it's like, just submit here, right? And you're like, did we really democratize access to capital by making websites that just filled up our top of our funnel? Or did we just make better marketing funnel tops for the rest of us, right? So blockchain, as you're explaining it, now sounds like, oh, okay, wait a minute, that would be...
a ledger, right? Like you could see everything, everything's validated. We could decide to put deals on chain and be like, hey, we have this deal. Can we syndicate it between these VCs? It expedite the ability to do diligence, like so many things that are possible. And that's what Grace and I are exploring. Like, how do we use this technology to create transparency, accelerate deal flow, reduce risk, and equally important, bring in new investors? Could we, because now we can take a fund and we don't have to only rely on institutionals because, I think one of your questions that you sent us was like, there's a kind of a bottleneck up there. Absolutely. But what if I could get, some of my friends who have money to invest to put it on a chain and we can all see and like be on the journey together.
Jenny just officially became the co-host. This is fantastic. Grace, talk to me about, is there a disincentive to that level of transparency, right? Because you articulated to us, when incentives don't flow a certain direction, things don't happen. And we also know that a lot of times incentives don't flow because incentives are ultimately designed by people, right? And there are reasons why people don't incentivize certain actions. So is this level of on-chain, which is just a phrase I still never get used to saying because I always feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Is this level of on-chain transparency so counter to the normal model of venture capital or private capital that like people, I don't want other people knowing that you invested in my startup, or I don't want other people knowing that I invested in your fund.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. And I think when I think about this, I think of something that I get asked a lot, which is, well, you'll never get through to like the Sequoias or the top VC firms. And what people probably don't realize, unless and maybe they do, but I certainly didn't, is that there are thousands of VC funds, right? Thousands of fund managers who are actually competing against these big guys. There's only a couple of handfuls that manage half of all VC. But there are thousands others who want to make investments. A lot of them are purpose driven. right? And so
Our friends Nora May and Shayna at Supply Chain Capital.
They're the best.
There you go. There you go. So thinking about it doesn't have to be, yes, there are going to be VCs who are going to be incentivized to be upfront, right? And be transparent. And we don't know yet what that looks like, right? We are exploring because there's so much technology, as you know, coming out like at an exponential rate, especially when it comes to DeFi and Web3 and all that. Like there's so much going on right now when it comes to that technology that it's interesting because a lot of investors and finance people don't understand blockchain in the way that if you get down to it, it's just it's a way to keep track of things, right? It's really, when you look down to it, it's a very simple technology at a high level, right? Like at a high level, it's a very simple technology, and how you use it, you can use it in a ton of, there's tons of companies that are using it to track fraud, right? And reduce billions of dollars that they spend on fraud.
Yeah. I once made the mistake in like 2019 on a hike here in LA one day with a young first-time blockchain founder. I made the mistake of describing it to him in my old guy speak of basically being like a super secure spreadsheet middleware tool. And he was like, dude, he's like, no, it's so much more than that. I'm like, but it isn't. I'm like, it is more than that, of course, in its applications, in the places that it can be utilized that nobody ever envisioned before. But it is essentially super secure, fully transparent.
Super secure.
Middleware software.
There's and there's a lot of ownership in that, and it's also extremely fast. I mean, it's extremely efficient.
Yeah. Real time, essentially, right?
Real time and global. It does not sleep. There's no stock exchange hours of like 9 to 4 or whatever it is. So
I'm curious. It's a phrase I've used a lot today, right? So I'm curious, right? Like we're bleeding into this other question that I had. So I'm going to ask it kind of in a different way, right? Setting aside the entrepreneurs that we're serving, the women founders, the founders of color, the folks from underrepresented communities that we're helping empower, staying on this theme of trying to use both the math, the proof, and the technology that you're building to essentially kind of accentuate and represent the proof and the truth. So far, like in the nascent existence of your great Catalyst Center, right? Like, what's the feedback been from the investors, from the people that are coming and partnering alongside you or that are investing in the fund so that you can manage their capital to invest and deploy out into the community, from partner organizations that you're trying to bring to bear to this conversation? Like, are they buying the pitch?
It is fascinating that if you paint a picture, it will resonate with them. They're like, absolutely, yes. And not complicated, because I think finance gets complicated. And when that happens, I always have a red flag. I'm like, why are you trying to make it so complicated? What are you hiding? We do the opposite. It's like super basic. And because it's basic, people understand what we're doing and they want to be part of this journey. Yeah. Because we are done complaining and being pissed off that only 2% of venture goes to women for years and years and years. Now we have the tools to go do something different. And so we have institutional investors, we have individuals. I've been really pleased by white males who come to us and say, I'm a girl dad. This is effed up. Like, here you go. Like, you wouldn't think they'd be the first in line.
Let's go white male. Like, let's go middle-aged white dudes. Woohoo!
Yeah. And the thing is that it makes sense. It's also the right thing to do. And it's also very innovative. And because of that combination of factors, we get like very forward-thinking investors.
That's fantastic.
People who are on the cutting edge of developing and shaping the future. These are not people who are like afraid of, they're just like, how do we do it? Let's figure it out. Let's go now.
That's fantastic.
And that is who we want in our circle. We want that type of energy because that's what it requires in this moment.
I have this kind of punchline question I always ask everybody, and maybe Grace, you can take it first, but I'd love to hear both your points of view on this one. I almost was going to ask this question by trying to name a whole bunch of women that half of which you probably know and the rest of which I want you to know. And then I started thinking as I've been listening to you, you probably know all of these people already, all of these amazing women that are at the front edge of this same fight and this same innovation in your space. So I'm just going to ask it and skip all their names, right? I ask this of everybody that ever has this conversation with me on this show. Is your work really about getting access to the table, or is your work really about building your own table as both investors and for entrepreneurs? Grace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think both apply, but it really is about creating our own space, like bringing our own chair, bringing our own fold out, and creating something new. Because you know, you got to think about, where do I want to put my energy? I've spent decades working across types of organizations and working in different types of people. Where do I want to spend my energy? Do I want to spend that energy fighting, or not fighting per se, but like kind of like trying to change something that's so established that really works for them, right? Do I want to change that? Do I want to spend that energy doing that where I might not get very far? Or do I want to just test something new? And I think one of the things that we come across, and I've certainly has been, it's so eye-opening for me, is meeting technologists, experts, investors who are like, they hadn't thought about it in this way, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And there's a lot of sort of like parallel things going on, but then maybe it's still going to always benefit the people it was already benefiting. But thinking about it benefiting other folks, right? Without taking away from the people who were already benefiting. And I think that's where I think about it is, yes, I think eventually we will maybe have more seats at the established table. But right now, I think we're trying to build our own table, and bring our chairs and bring some chairs for other folks. And they might be a little rickety, but it's going to work. No one's going to fall down.
Jenny, what do you think? Anything to add to that?
I think Grace covered it very well. I would just say that I don't see it as being rickety. I see as our chairs being like super souped up, AI enabled, soon to be blockchain enabled. So these don't exist. These kinds of tables don't exist.
Yeah.
And we want to make them very inclusive. So if the people who are in those other tables want to come along, come on down, just be authentic. We're not the kind of founders who want to see like these schemes and like vulture venture, none of that stuff. Like we want to set up our founders for success, and we want to set them up so that they can reap the benefit of their effort and, own their company, right? Not like get so diluted that they're working for others. Like that's not the point. And so Grace and I decided because of that to start investing at very seed or early stage so that we can put deep infrastructure for these female founders so they know how to navigate and like not be at the point where they're diluted or they don't understand their cap table, that kind of thing. So yeah, we have a pretty cool table, I would say.
Nice.
Rob.
No, I love it. And we're building new tables. It's funny because funny in an interesting way, not in a humorous way, because both of you have spent so much of your time and the origin story in banking. I've often thought about the tables this way, and a nod or a that's crazy, Rob, like in banking, right? So we're all part of banking. Okay, that's the system that exists, right? That works, that's incentivized to work the way that it works. But there are lots of people in lots of communities, both big and small, neighborhoods and towns, et cetera, that go and say like, hey, we're going to build a small business bank and our clientele is going to be this clientele and work and we're banks. And for some reason, it's always been accepted as like, oh, well, there's a logic to it. There's a business model that makes sense, that's proven. There's a set of math that maps like, oh, okay, cool. These guys, and let's be honest, they're mostly always guys, right? Like, oh, they're setting up a business bank, or they're setting up a private business bank or private bank for wealthy clients, or we're setting up and we're a big consumer bank. And that's what our differentiation is. And we're really good at the consumer stuff, right? We're a small business bank. And to me, I always thought like that was the apt description of the various tables, right? Like, yeah, you're operating inside of a system, but I love how you highlighted it, Grace. It's this, and by the way, I just keep thinking of like Kiana Patterson here in Los Angeles, a great friend of an alumnus of this show. And Kiana's attitude is always just very much like build our own fucking table, right? And our table's better, and our table is better because it's suited and it's specifically built for these people that we're working with, right? And we're not going to just shout at the other one, because the other one is literally, as you said, Grace, functioning exactly as it was designed to. And by the way, for the people in that system, very, very well, right? Like wildly effectively. So rather than shouting at the thing that is working and has worked for the last 50 years of its existence, like you should do better, and wagging our fingers at it, like, why not just go like, okay, we're going to take a lot of the models and the tools and the systems you guys use, but we're going to go over here and we're going to create a new bank, using my metaphor, right? And we're going to catalyze different communities in different ways. Does that make sense? Or if it does make sense. Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
It's a whole new infrastructure. And I believe that owning infrastructure is the game-changing thing nowadays.
Yeah.
Because everybody's building. Great. Awesome. But if you can own the infrastructure and the distribution, it's gold.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's now like, let's build the rails.
Yeah.
People can come on it. We can dictate the terms of what gets done, and, ethically, thoughtfully, data-driven, transparently. Like, these are things that we all value in finance, right? You go get a loan, you want to know your terms. But then there's this other secondary market. Loans get bundled up and sold into, like, what is happening out there? Then all of a sudden it gets, whoa, what is going on? And we believe on venture that the whole thing needs to be transparent in order to be done well and thoughtfully, and with like the kind of values Grace and I employ.
Yeah. But values which, by the way, include, and I love these two as I read up on you guys, joy and courage. Like, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I say oftentimes, hell, I say it to myself and Deanna, but I mean, I say it to the rest of the world and entrepreneurs when I talk to them and mentor them and advise them, investors when they call me for advice, is like, if we're not having fun doing this, folks, like, if we're not excited to wake up and do this in the morning, there are a whole bunch, as my dad used to say, there are a whole bunch of other ways to make a better living. So,
Right.
So yeah, I love that you guys put joy and courage at the center of what you're doing, both for yourselves as founders, as creators, as well as encouragement and inspiration for those people that you're facilitating, right? In some ways, to kind of take it all the way back to the top, right? I'm now seeing, as I close my eyes and think about how you guys think, as my word, as entrepreneurial thinkers in everything that you do, I'm envisioning how that feeling of the founder that you're helping kind of essentially attaches itself to helping your daughters to believe in what's possible, helping your daughters to think differently. And that's a shameless plug for my whole thesis about all of this stuff, which is that I ultimately want all of our daughters to wake up and be entrepreneurial thinkers, no matter what they're doing, no matter where they're working, no matter how they're deploying their talents and their skills in life. The world, as I say in the preview of the show, doesn't just need more entrepreneurs and investors. That's great, but we need more entrepreneurial thinkers in every category. And that is ultimately what you two are doing, which is terrific. You talked about something, question or two before we finish up here and get to our last segment. You've mentioned it a few times, both of you, and Jenny, you mentioned it again recently, like this idea, it's a movement. So I'm curious, like, we're all here digitally. You two are both in the Bay Area, if I'm correct. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. But probably in different parts of the Bay Area. You're not in the same office right now for folks that aren't watching on YouTube. Right. So is there a pathway through which this movement of your community, your organization manifests itself, like in the physical world? Right, where we're helping people establish these relationships or sub-communities inside of the community as a whole? Or is everything about the Catalyst Center and the fun virtual and digital?
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Haney & Company. You know, we all know that in today's complex financial landscape, having a trusted advisor can make all the difference. Since 1960, Haney & Company has been providing comprehensive accounting services to a diverse range of clients, from small businesses to large corporations. With nearly 400 professionals across 13 locations, they offer services in tax, audit, business consulting, and client advisory. In fact, their commitment to excellence has earned them recognition from Accounting Today and Forbes magazines. At Haney & Company, though, it's not just about balancing books. It's about building lasting relationships based on trust and mutual growth. So visit HaneyCPAs.com. That's HaneyCPAs.com to learn how they can support your business's financial journey.
So we do not have a physical office. That said, we collaborate a ton. And that is the way in which this movement happens, because we're not the only leaders who believe that women founders deserve more capital. There's a lot of us out there.
I think I've had like 80% of you on the show at this point.
Right. And there's a lot of us out there, but we have few resources. And so our perspective is that if you can combine the power of what we all do in ways that leverage, catalyze, accelerate this movement, we will all be better for it. And so we think a lot about who do we need to partner with? What kinds of opportunities can we do together? Do we pitch together to get larger investments? Obviously the blockchain thing is one way to bring more community in, so more benefit. Our research will be public. We're getting ready to release it, will be public. Use it. We want others to go and run with it. Everything we do is about sharing, about collaboration, it's bigger than just AMH Catalyst Center.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's not, I mean, is there to some degree like competition? I mean, it maybe in the sense that you also have the parallel fund and someone else might have a fund and therefore you're competing for or is this as they used to say, I was almost going to say the guy's name and I'm not going to give him the credit for this. I'm just going to take it. Is it co-opetition as we used to say in the early 90s?
I feel like what we're doing is like the purest sense of real collaboration.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you the example of why. Particularly women, are made to feel like we're all competition. We're made to feel like if I get this, you can't have it because I need it. I need it more than you.
And scarcity mindset, right? Too. There's not enough.
Right.
We just heard there's only 2% of this is getting down to us, so we're all fighting.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
And so we're like hoarding and maybe not sharing fully, all kinds of things happening. We happen to surround ourselves with women, and probably because we show up that way, we're like, hey, just look at this, take this. So our fund is an affiliate of an existing venture firm. And you may know Tracy Gray.
I do not had her on the show yet, but know of her.
Of the 22 fund. Yeah. She started her fund like 7 or 8 years ago. And she just said, leverage everything I have, Jenny. Whatever you need, just do it because it will accelerate your ability to go to market. Like it gives you our track record as well. So between your and Grace and our whole team, it's beautiful. You can do whatever you do and just let's synergize this so that we're really thoughtfully put together, but let's do this. And she has saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours. And we're due diligencing deals now. Yeah. This is not normal.
I know. But in fairness, I'll say this as the guy in the conversation today, right? It is normal in many circles of women, right? It is wholly abnormal outside of this half of our species, right? And it's not universally normal. Of course, there are women who are exclusionary and who are overly protective and who are limited and driven by a scarcity mindset. I get that, right? We're not going to be Pollyannish about this. But it is to give credit where credit's due, right? I mean, so now I'm thinking basically Marie Roca in Connecticut and Realist Lab, there's collaboration between her and you. There's Erica Lucas in Oklahoma City, right? Oklahoma City, correct? Yes.
Yep.
I was going to say Tulsa. She would have been mad at me, right? Erica there, again, Kiana here, Leslie Feinsteig up in the Pacific Northwest. There's even, and this is where there's the most alignment in this example, but I can still see the differences in the way that it fits. Even our recent guest, Allison Byers and Scroobius and what she's doing out of Boston. And then clearly, future guest, hint, hint, conversation that hasn't happened yet. Our friend Paige from All Rays and and how she's trying to repurpose that. There's so much collaborative opportunity between you all. And frankly, shame on my half of the species, right? Men just would see that first as competition. And wouldn't naturally see, not all men, but wouldn't naturally see that as I love you, true, pure collaboration, Right. So we don't have to make up the Jeff Bezos word from the 90s of co-opetition, right? Like it's just pure collaboration at its purest human sense.
And we all win.
Nah, of
because
course.
as soon as we start doing deals, like we can actually build a bigger firm.
Right.
And it's just, you just have to be that way. In my experience, if you really want to do like crazy things, and my goal, I know Grace as well, is to create like a best-in-class VC methodology that supports women founders. You can't try to hide everything because you don't know everything and you haven't seen everything. But the more people you let in, like you start to get a better perspective. You start to get better calibration, some really good feedback that we would never have thought about.
Yeah.
And so we are just like, I would say, because we are that collaborative, we move faster and more thoughtfully than if it was just Grace and I and a few people in our board.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'll just add. Oh, I'm sorry, but
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to add that this is part of the movement, right? Part of the movement is thinking, what does collaboration look like? What does information sharing look like? What does my success look like? It's not at the cost of your success. And frankly, I am not like an expert in everything. And even though I tell that to my husband, but I am not the expert in everything. And so building on the strengths, right? That's part of the movement. And then thinking about, thank you so much for pointing out the joy and the courage. Remembering that there's joy. There should be joy in the work.
Yeah.
Right. Joy in seeing the seeing people be successful. And then the courage to do it. I'm like, I'm sure a lot of founders and even the very successful ones now at some point it was a scary thing to do. Right. And that's something that should be acknowledged, and to have that courage to be a founder, but also be an investor and have a leap of faith and invest in something that is actually probably really innovative, right? What the core of what VC used to be.
Yeah, very much so.
So thinking about that movement of like really shifting that narrative. And so it's part of the movement, right? And I just want to throw that in.
No, I'd love to. Thank you. And again, all these names I dropped, right? Just as shout outs to all of our great friends and many alumnus of the show. That's your physical presence, right? That's where this shows up. That's where the movement shows up, is the Catalyst Center and the fund just becomes partners with these other, and let's be honest, it's, we used to have this, it's not that difficult to change the world. It is difficult to change the world, but at the same token, it's also not. Right, because it does really just start with individual actions and individual imagination. And then, Jenny, you said it early on, like you didn't use the word, but to tell the story, right? Like it takes sometimes somebody just to tell a story and then back it up with context and, in your case, data and proof that proves that story is true someplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it is replicable. And you've got this group of, if it's 8, 10, 12, 15, 50, 100, 200, 400 women out of across the United States, across the world, out of the 8 billion people on the planet or the 340 million people here, like that's enough to change the world. And in this context, change an industry by bringing new innovation, new thinking, new philosophies of how we collaborate and how we build relationships with each other. And that in and of itself is the innovation before we even talk about AI and blockchain and those types of things, which is awesome. It's been such a joy just having this conversation with you, honestly. I'm super excited, if you can't tell. So last question, this kind of the closing segment question. We'll change the vibe a little bit. So if you could either collaborate with each other here and come up with kind of 3 things. I want to pitch this one to the entrepreneur that's listening. Right. So we've talked in the, as our beloved governor here, I like him, in California often uses the phrase like the aggregate information and the aggregate data is fantastic, but no one lives in the aggregate. Mm-hmm. Right. And so now if we could talk in this last answer to the entrepreneur who is living in her very small aggregate, right? Or maybe to the investor who doesn't have the relationships or the networks. What are the first 3 things that they should do, these first 3 actions they should take in the next 90 days if they wanted to, as an entrepreneur, kind of increase their chance to raise money, or as an investor to increase the likelihood that they could invest in their local community? And so kind of two questions in one, because there's two of you today.
So I'll take a stab at this. I think for a founder, I would, and I am a founder, so take a dose of my own recommendation. But one is to find, if you don't, navigating opacity, resources that you trust and that actually have a track record of doing the thing you want to do. There's like way too much advice floating around, and some of it I'm like, this is garbage. Like, why is this floating around in the universe? And two, sometimes they're asking for you to pay for this garbage advice. And so I always say, just be careful who you take advice from, and make sure you've done this before, you've seen this play out, and you could help a founder get to where they need to go. The second thing, and I'll stick to venture capital specifically. I understand it's opaque. We're about to release our platform publicly. I would welcome you to come to our AMHCatalystCenter.org website and become part of our network, because it's not just Grace and I giving our wisdom, but the network that we bring that is designed to help accelerate your success. And so we welcome you to be part of that network. I would say the third thing, and Grace mentioned it, is making sure that you're taking or capitalizing your business with the capital that is most suited for where you are. Because a mismatch of capital it's detrimental. So if you take venture and you go and run your business and you're like, well, I don't want to grow that fast. I want to make the right hires. I want to do the other thing. I want to serve they are not typically going to care about that.
Yeah.
They're going to want their return, and they're going to want it as fast as possible. And so if you don't play by the rules, they're going to boot you out. As a CEO, that happens a lot.
Yep.
And so maybe it's not venture, and maybe it's, like a CDFI loan from a community development if you're just on a small business that wants to grow, or maybe it's a bank loan. But there are different ways to capitalize a business. It's not always venture. But the point of it is making sure that you're in the right. It's like buying shoes. Buy the right size. Other you're going to be flopping around. You don't want to do that.
I love that. Grace, maybe you can tackle it from the prospective investor point of view.
Well, I'd say I think probably that there's some things in there that also applies to investors, right? Okay. You can layer a lot of those with the same lens when you're thinking about investors. And one thing, I was trying to think if this one thought I had would be better suited for one or the other. And I think it's both the same as well. But thinking about, it's a story. I have a really good friend who was in private equity, and we were talking about sort of these companies that kind of flip-flop from between, how are they gonna, what's their stance on something and what's their stance on this, and no, we're changing it now because we don't have to anymore. And there's an issue with that, in that it's confusing. So remembering your North Star, what guides you, and that applies to an investor. So when you think about an investor, why are you investing? Is it just to make money? Then that's fine, right? But it is also to, improve climate, improve a certain technology, improve the outcomes of a certain disease that's been, in existence for too long. I mean, thinking about what is that North Star, and there's so much noise when it comes to what is going on. I mean, there's so many times I've had to step back and say, this is too much. I don't have to get on everything. I can just, what works for me right now, and then we can test and see. But, when you have a North Star, you can help, it cuts through a lot of that noise. And so that. I would say that I can say that for both a founder as well, right? What is your North Star? And if your North Star is to just build something right now, then, for right now, that's it. You don't need the VC, right? You don't need VC dollars for that necessarily. What is that, what does that mean? And just having that North Star, which is it can be a very hard process, but I feel like that's something that will just really kind of cut through a lot of the garbage advice and the noise and just a lot of the muck that's around.
that in and of itself, cutting through the noise and the muck, is additional advice. So that's a fourth bonus bullet point from the two of you today. Thank you. This was terrific. I had high expectations because Thomas spoke so highly of you, Jenny. And then I don't even know if we ever told Grace this, but like I sent the first follow-up to Jenny. And then immediately when I hit send, I said to myself and then said to Deanna, I was like, I feel like I want to invite her partner. Like I want both of their voices on this. And Jenny was like, yes, like, thank you. Let's do that. That's awesome. Right. So Grace, thank you for gracing us with your presence today and for having the courage to come on and do the podcast, which is not always everybody's fun thing to do on a Tuesday morning, is get on and have a deep conversation with somebody. So I really appreciate both of your energy. I'm super excited. Thank you for helping us all learn more about how you guys are innovating. And again, selfishly, my thesis, like thinking entrepreneurially about all of this in all of its complexity and nuance, because at the end of the day, my humble opinion is it's entrepreneurial thinkers, innovative, disruptive doers like you two who are, again, and I love that we've moved on from this notion of like fighting the system to make it better. No, you're just taking some of the best practices of that system that work and taking it out to a whole new audience and a whole new market, because that market is full of opportunity. And we all want to unleash it. So, and selfishly, my last comment of thanks to both of you is just, again, as an unabashed mama's boy / raised largely by my older sisters / turned into unexpectedly full-time single dad of a teenage girl who's now a 32-year-old woman who lives a couple of miles from me here in Los Angeles and has just turned me into a grandfather for the first time. Like,
congratulations.
I am, as all the guests and listeners to our show know, like just an unabashed proponent of the fact that the 50% of our world that is made up by women is where so much of our next 100 years and our next 500 years of potential and progress exists. So it's always an honor for me to have a chance to have two incredibly talented, young, forward-thinking women on the show to unpack the other part of life that I don't live inside.
I especially like the young part.
I always say, by the way, I always say, as long as you're younger than me, and if you're younger than me by a certain gap, I'm probably going to derisive or like lovingly refer to you as like kid or stupid stuff like that.
We will take it
because I love nicknames. But as like, if you're younger than me, and I'm 57 going on 58, so if you're younger than me, you're always going to get a young comment. Because I'm lucky. I've got like 85-year-old mentors in my life who are constantly telling me how young I am. So I'm like, okay,
it all works.
I'll take with that circle of life, right? So real quickly before we go, let's shout out how people can find you, follow you, sign up for anything on the website name, social media, or where you don't want people to find you, like both individually and then for the firm.
I would say right now it's amh.org, and then I'm very, very active on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's amhcatalyst.org. And yeah.
Operations.
Jenny saving the day, making me not feel so bad for butchering the name of the company.
I was just dealing with the URL the other day, so that's why. And yeah, LinkedIn, right now, this is where we are spending so much time head down. But those are the places that we'll be responding. Fantastic.
Thank you again so much. This is such a joy.
Likewise. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.